Welcome to Void Case Files. Before we begin tonight's story, I want to ask you to hit that subscribe button. We're aiming for 10,000 subscribers by the end of 2026, and with daily videos like this one, we're going to bring you the most terrifying true accounts from the darkness. Your support means everything. Now, let's dive into tonight's case. I swore an oath to protect and serve, but some things you just can't fight with a badge and a gun. My resignation wasn't due to burnout or a new career opportunity. It was because the shadows of our city held something far more ancient and terrifying than any criminal. This is the untold story of the night shifts, the others, and the pacts we made to survive. My name is Daniel Klein, and I need to tell you about Mill Hall, Pennsylvania, before someone else ends up like Officer Stevens. Before another cop transfers in thinking, it's just another quiet posting, and learns the hard way that some towns have rules for reasons you can't find in any manual. I was 31 when I took the transfer from Altoona. 8 years on the force, good record, looking for something slower. My parents were aging up in Clearfield and Mill Hall seemed perfect. Population 1,600, sitting quiet along Bald Eagle Creek in Clinton County. The kind of place where you know everyone's name, and the biggest emergency is Mrs. Henderson's cat stuck in a tree. That's what I thought anyway. Chief Raymond Fisher interviewed me in his office on a grey September afternoon. He was 63 with a crew cut gone silver and hands that had seen decades of handshakes and paperwork. But it was his eyes that I remember. Tired. Deeply, profoundly tired, in a way that had nothing to do with age. "You ever work nights, Klein?" He didn't offer me coffee. Didn't do the usual small talk dance. "Plenty. Graveyard shifts in Altoona for 3 years." "Altoona nights are different." He leaned back and his chair creaked. "Mill Hall has its own rhythms after dark. You'll need to learn them fast, and you'll need to follow them exactly. Can you do that?" "Yes, sir." "Good. Start Monday. Day shift for a week, then we'll move you to nights." He stood and I thought the interview was over, but he stopped me at the door. "Klein, when we tell you something here, we're not being folksy or superstitious, we're keeping you alive, remember that." I laughed it off. Small town, hazing, I figured. Every department has its traditions, its way of testing the new guy. I'd heard weirder. The Mill Hall Police Department operated out of a brick building from the Eisenhower era, wedged between the post office and an antique shop that never seemed to open. 2 stories, narrow windows, the kind of place that smelled like old coffee and older paperwork. During the day, it felt like every small-town station I'd ever seen. Phones ringing occasionally, someone complaining about parking, the hum of fluorescent lights that probably hadn't been changed since Carter was president. But I noticed something that first week. Around sunset, maybe 6:30 or 7, the whole building would shift. The temperature dropped a few degrees. The lights seemed dimmer, even though nothing had changed. Sounds echoed differently. It felt like the building was holding its breath, waiting for something. My partner was Eli Brennan, 47, Clinton County, born and raised. He had the look of someone who'd spent his life in these mountains, all weathered skin and careful eyes. The kind of guy who measured every word before letting it out of his mouth. "Settling in okay?" he asked on my second day, both of us sitting in the break room with burnt coffee that tasted like it had been made during the Reagan administration. "Yeah. Found an apartment on Water Street. Quiet area." "Everywhere's quiet here." He said it without pride or judgment, just fact. Then he looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. "You notice anything odd yet?" "Like what?" "Like how everyone's off the streets by 8. I had noticed. During my first week on day shift, I'd driven through town after my shift ended, just getting a feel for the place. By 7:30, Mill Hall looked abandoned. Not just quiet. Abandoned. No cars, no pedestrians, no lights in windows. The Mill Hall Tavern, which locals bragged was the oldest bar in Clinton County, closed at sunset. The pizza place stopped deliveries at 6. Even the Sheets up in Lock Haven, usually open 24 hours, closed at 9. "People here just prefer their homes," I said. Eli studied me for a long moment. "Sure, that's one way to put it." My first week was textbook small-town policing. Speeding ticket on Route 150, noise complaint that turned out to be a kid's birthday party, a fender bender in the municipal lot that both drivers apologised for before I even got there. Easy work. The kind of job where you actually help people instead of just documenting tragedy. But the nights, even riding along during day shift when we'd patrol past sunset, something felt off. I'd see movement in alleys that disappeared when I looked directly at it, hear footsteps on empty sidewalks. Once I could have sworn someone was standing in the window of the closed hardware store, perfectly still, watching us drive by. When I mentioned it to Eli, he just nodded. "You're noticing. That's good. Means you're paying attention." On my day off, I drove up to Lock Haven and found the Clinton County Historical Society in an old Victorian house near the courthouse. I'm not usually a history buff, but something about Fisher's warnings nagged at me. If I was going to work here, I wanted to understand the place. The volunteer working that day was a sweet elderly woman who showed me to their newspaper archive, all bound volumes organised by year. I started with 1947, don't ask me why. Just a hunch. October 29th, 1947. Lock Haven Express. The headline made my skin crawl. Mystery surrounds disappearances. 14 missing in 6 weeks. The article was frustratingly vague the way old newspapers sometimes were. 14 people gone between September and October. All vanished between sunset and sunrise. The last one, a farmer named Dutch Yoder, walked into the woods near Fishing Creek on October 28th to check his traps. Search parties found the traps. Never found Dutch. Then nothing. November came, and the disappearances just stopped. I found a follow-up from November 15th. Town leaders report resolution to ongoing situation. It talked about an accommodation reached and a new understanding, but gave zero details. Like everyone agreed not to discuss what actually happened. Researching the 47 incidents. The volunteer had appeared beside me so quietly I actually jumped. "Yeah? What actually happened?" She smiled, but it was the saddest smile I'd ever seen. Official story is mass hysteria. People getting lost in the woods, maybe a bear, maybe nothing. Unofficial story is the town made a deal. She glanced toward the door, lowered her voice. "With what was here first." "What does that mean?" "Ask your chief, honey. He'll tell you when you're ready." She walked away before I could press her. That Friday, my second week in Mill Hall, Chief Fisher called me into his office at 6:45. The sun had just set, painting everything in that purple twilight that makes the world look unreal. "Close the door." He was standing by a steel cabinet I'd noticed my first day. It had a simple label, Night Operations, 1947. "You've done good work this week, Klein, no complaints. But now we need to have a conversation that's going to sound completely insane." "Okay." He unlocked the cabinet and removed a leather binder so old it looked like it might crumble in his hands. The pages were yellowed, filled with different handwriting styles from different decades. Fountain pen, ballpoint, pencil. Some entries looked ancient, others recent. "The Night Protocols," he read from the cover, "established November 1947, updated as necessary." He sat down heavily. "I'm going to read these to you once. Tomorrow you'll read them yourself. Then you'll carry a copy on every night patrol for the rest of your career here. These aren't suggestions, Klein. They're not traditions. They're survival." He opened the binder. His voice was steady, almost mechanical, like he'd recited these words 1,000 times. "Rule 1. Never patrol alone between 10 p.m. and 5 a.m. Wait for your partner, no exceptions. Rule 2. If you observe someone standing alone in the street after 10 p.m., do not approach. Document the location and time, then continue patrol. Rule 3. Do not enter the woods north of Fishing Creek or west of Bald Eagle Creek after dark for any reason. Rule 4. If you hear your name spoken from outside your vehicle, do not respond. Do not acknowledge it. Drive to the next intersection before stopping." He paused, took a breath. Rule 5. Follow designated patrol routes exactly. The routes exist for a reason. Rule 6. If you encounter a child alone after 10 p.m., radio the chief immediately. Do not make contact. Do not speak to them. Rule 7. Keep your headlights on at all times during night patrol, even when parked. Rule 8. If your radio goes completely silent, no static, no white noise, nothing, return to the station by the most direct route. Rule 9. What you see during night patrol stays between night officers and the chief. Day shift, doesn't need to know. Rule 10. These rules exist because of an agreement made in 1947. Breaking them violates that agreement. The consequences are permanent. The office felt smaller suddenly, colder. Chief, is this some kind of initiation thing? I wish to God it was. He closed the binder. In 1947, 14 people vanished from this town in 6 weeks. You saw the newspaper articles. How did you know Because every cop who's worth a damn does their research. Those 14 people were taken, Klein, not by a person, not by an animal, by something that's been in these woods longer than there've been towns to name. He stood, walked to the window. Outside, the street was already empty. The Susquehannock, the indigenous people who lived here for thousands of years, they knew. They had their own rules, their own understandings. White settlers came, didn't listen, didn't respect. For 200 years there were incidents. A person here, a person there. Strange sounds, things seen in the woods that shouldn't exist. 1947 was different. The town had been expanding. New housing development wanted to clear the old hemlock forests. They cut down trees that were 400 years old, and something got angry. Eli appeared in the doorway. I hadn't heard him arrive. I thought it was bullshit too, Eli said quietly. Thought Fisher was testing me, seeing if I'd quit. Then I saw one of them standing in the middle of Main Street at midnight. Watched it walk backward into an alley without turning around. You can't unsee something like that. See what? My voice came out harder than I intended. What the hell are you both talking about? The Watchers, Fisher said. That's what the old-timers called them. They're part of the land, part of the old growth, the deep places. Sheriff Harter, back in 47, he organized the town elders. They went into the oldest hemlock grove with offerings. Tobacco like the Susquehannock used to leave. Fresh venison. They waited 3 nights, and on the 3rd night the Watchers came. They negotiated until dawn, established boundaries, rules, and agreement. The town stays in the town after dark, respects certain territories, follows the protocols. In exchange, residents are left alone. Both sides test it sometimes, make sure it's still honoured. But as long as we keep our word, they keep theirs. I stood up. This is insane. Yes, Fisher agreed, but it's also true. You'll see tonight. Then you'll understand why we have the rules. That night, 10:30, Eli and I rolled out in Unit 2. The streets were dead empty, like they'd been every night, but now I understood it differently. This wasn't preference. This was compliance. The radio crackled with static between 10 and 11. Not unusual interference. It had patterns to it, almost rhythmic, like something breathing. 11:52, dispatch call. Possible disturbance at Water Street and Penn Avenue. Eli's whole body tensed. We go together. Stay in the vehicle unless I explicitly tell you otherwise. We pulled up to the intersection. My headlights cut through the darkness, illuminating the crosswalk, the stop sign, the closed storefronts, and something standing in the middle of the intersection. It looked like a person wearing a long dark coat, but the proportions were wrong in a way that made my brain hurt trying to process it. The arms hung too low, almost to where knees should be. The legs were too thin, the head tilted at an angle no human neck should allow. I reached for the door handle automatically. Eli's hand clamped on my wrist like a vice. Rule 2, observe, document, do not approach. Someone might need help. That's not someone. I looked again, really looked. The figure hadn't moved at all. No breathing, no weight shifting, nothing. Completely, impossibly still. Then its head began to rotate toward our vehicle. Slowly, smoothly, it kept rotating past where a neck should stop, past 90 degrees, past 180. It completed a full rotation and kept going, the movement fluid and wrong and completely silent. My mouth went dry. Every instinct I had screamed that what I was seeing couldn't be real. The figure began moving, not toward us, backward, walking backward down the street without turning, without looking where it was going. The movement was smooth, purposeful. It walked backward into the narrow alley between 2 buildings, never breaking its gaze toward us, and the shadows swallowed it whole. Eli was writing in his log, his hand completely steady. Watcher observation, water and pen, 11:52 p.m. No contact made. He looked at me. You did good. You didn't get out. Most people first time, they get out. What the hell was that? Exactly what Fisher told you. One of the things we share this town with. They watch. We watch. As long as everyone follows the rules, everyone stays safe. He put the car in gear. Welcome to night shift, Klein. I didn't sleep that day. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that thing's head rotating impossibly, endlessly. I saw the way it moved backward with absolute confidence, like the normal rules of anatomy and physics were just suggestions it chose to ignore. Sunday afternoon, I drove out to First McGonagall Cemetery. I needed to see the names, make them real, make all of this real. The memorial stone was simple granite, weathered by 70 Pennsylvania winters. In memory of those lost, September-October 1947. 14 names carved below. Sarah Chen, age 19, Robert Walsh, 42, Dutch Yoda, 57. Regular people with regular lives who walked into the darkness and never came back. You're the new night officer. I turned. An elderly woman stood nearby, impossibly old, with white hair and eyes that had seen things. She held flowers. Margaret Stall. I've lived in Mill Hall 86 years. She moved past me to lay the flowers on a nearby grave. My grandfather was William Stall. He was one of the men who went into the Hemlocks in 1947. The negotiation? He told me everything before he died, made me promise to remember, to tell the next generation if they needed to know. She straightened up, fixing me with those ancient eyes. The Watchers aren't evil, Mr. Klein. They're not demons or monsters, they're just old. Older than this town, older than the county, older than Pennsylvania itself. They were here when the Susquehannock lived in these valleys. The indigenous people understood. They left the deep groves alone, left offerings, respected boundaries. White settlers didn't. They cut, built, expanded. For 200 years the Watchers tolerated it, took someone occasionally, warned us in their way. But 1947 was different. A developer bought the old hemlock forest north of Fishing Creek. 400-year-old trees cut down in a week. Sacred groves, destroyed for housing lots that were never built. The Watchers stopped tolerating. 14 people in 6 weeks. My grandfather said the whole town was in a panic. State police found nothing. FBI found nothing. People just vanished like they'd never existed. So the town elders went to the last old-growth hemlock grove and waited. 3 nights, my grandfather said. On the 3rd night, the Watchers came. They negotiated until dawn, established the boundaries, the rules, and it's held ever since. Held how? Respect, on both sides. We stay out of their territories, follow the night protocols. They leave the town alone. Both sides test it sometimes, make sure the agreement is still honoured, still remembered. But it works, Mr. Klein. 77 years of peace, not a single disappearance since November 1947. That's the power of keeping your word. Monday night, 1:47 in the morning, Eli and I were patrolling the eastern route along Bald Eagle Creek. The water moved slowly over ancient rocks, reflecting our headlights in fractured patterns. I saw them in the tree line, standing between the massive hemlocks. I counted 7, then looked away to check my mirror. When I looked back, there were 12, all perfectly still, all watching our vehicle with that same impossible stillness I'd seen before. Don't count them, Eli said softly. Don't try to make sense of how many. Just acknowledge and keep moving. As we drove past, I checked the side mirror. The 12 figures were now standing on the road behind us, arranged in a perfect line across both lanes. I blinked. The road was empty. I checked the mirror again. Nothing. They do that, Eli said. Move in ways that don't make sense. Appear in places they shouldn't be able to reach. You get used to it. How? By accepting that you don't understand everything. By following the rules. By doing your job. He glanced at me. You're handling this better than most. Stevens, the guy you replaced? He quit after 3 weeks. Couldn't take seeing them every night. Said it was breaking his brain trying to rationalize it. Where'd he go? Florida. Sent the chief a postcard saying he was done with Pennsylvania winters. Really, he was done with things that shouldn't exist. Eli smiled grimly. But they do exist, and they're not going anywhere, so we adapt. Friday night, October 25th, 2:33 a.m. The radio crackled with a call that made my blood freeze. Units, we have a report of a child walking alone on Spruce Street. Caller says she looks lost. Eli grabbed the radio before I could. Copy that. En route. Chief, you monitoring? Fisher's voice came through immediately, alert despite the hour. On my way. Do not approach. Wait for me. We found her 4 blocks from the initial report. A little girl in a white nightgown, maybe 8 years old, standing under a streetlight. Our headlights illuminated her completely. She was staring directly at our vehicle, not moving at all. Fisher's pickup appeared in less than 5 minutes. I've no idea how he made it across town that fast. He got out alone, walked toward the child with slow, measured steps. Not aggressive, not fearful, just purposeful. He stopped about 10 feet away. This isn't your night, his voice carried in the still air. The agreement stands. The little girl tilted her head. The movement was too smooth, too fluid. Then she smiled. Her teeth were too perfect, too white, and there were too many of them. The smile stretched too wide. Just checking, Chief? Her voice sounded like wind through pine branches, like water over stones. Not quite human. Not quite anything I could identify. Making sure you all remember. We remember. We honor it. Every night, every patrol, every year. She nodded, that same too fluid movement. Then she turned and walked between 2 houses. I knew those houses. The gap between them was maybe 3 feet, if that. No way a person could fit through. But she walked into that gap and disappeared like she'd stepped through a door. Fisher returned to his truck. He looked like he'd aged 10 years in 10 minutes. Back at the station, Eli made coffee while Fisher and I sat in the break room. The chief's hands shook slightly as he lifted his mug. That was a test. They do it every few years. Send something that looks vulnerable, helpless. A child, an injured person, an elderly man who seems confused. They're checking if we'll break the rules to help. What happens if we do? Best case, the person who breaks the rule disappears. Worst case, the whole agreement collapses. We're back to 1947. People start vanishing. The town dies. Or we abandon it. He met my eyes. I've been chief for 22 years, Klein. I've kept this town safe by keeping the agreement. That little girl wasn't a little girl. She was something old and patient, testing our resolve, and we passed. Again. October 26th, 11:48 p.m., exactly 1 week before Halloween. Emergency call, drunk driver crashed on Route 150, north edge of town. Driver fled into the woods north of Fishing Creek, Rule 3 territory. We found the pickup truck crumpled against a tree, airbag deployed, driver's door open, fresh blood on the steering wheel, a trail of blood droplets leading into the forest. Eli was already calling it in. Dispatch, we need state police and EMS driver fled into the woods. We cannot pursue. I stared at that blood trail disappearing into darkness. He could bleed out. If he's in those woods, he's already gone. State police ETA is 45 minutes. He doesn't have 45 minutes. Daniel, don't. Eli's voice was sharp. Rule 3 exists for a reason. You've seen them. You know what's in there. I grabbed the medical kit from our trunk, grabbed my flashlight. I became a cop to save lives, not watch people die because of fear. It's not fear, it's survival, it's the agreement. Then the agreement needs to be flexible enough for actual police work. I crossed into the forest before he could stop me. The temperature dropped instantly like I'd walked through an invisible wall of ice. The hemlocks here were ancient, their trunks wider than cars, their branches blocking out the stars. My flashlight beam seemed weaker, like the darkness was drinking the light. I followed the blood trail. The forest was completely silent. No insects, no night birds, no wind. Just my footsteps on decades of fallen needles. I found him maybe 100 yards in. Unconscious, slumped against a tree, deep laceration on his forehead. Pulse was thready but present. I opened the medical kit, started treating the wound. That's when I felt them, watching from every direction, not just one, Dozens, maybe hundreds. Movement in the corners of my vision. Figures between the trees, tall and thin and wrong. They moved like stop-motion animation, like frames were missing from their movement. Then the voices started. "Danny, sweetie, come here." My mother's voice. She'd been dead for 4 years. "I need you, honey. I'm lost." "Daniel, help me." My ex-wife. "Please, I'm scared." "Partner, I'm hurt." Eli's voice. "I need help. Over here." Rule 4. Don't respond. Don't acknowledge. I focused on the driver, bandaged the wound, checked for spinal injury, got him stable enough to move, started dragging him back toward the road. The voices intensified. My father, dead since I was 19. My brother Tommy, who lives in Pittsburgh. My academy instructor, all calling my name, all begging for help in perfectly replicated voices. The figures closed in. I could see them clearly now in my flashlight beam. They weren't human, had never been human. Long limbs that bent in too many places, faces that were almost right but fundamentally terribly wrong, eyes that reflected light like animals but held an intelligence that was ancient and utterly alien. One spoke with Eli's voice, but its mouth didn't move correctly. The words came from somewhere else. "You broke the agreement, Daniel. Come deeper. We'll show you why." Another with Fisher's voice. "Just a little further. See what happens to those who don't follow the rules." I kept dragging. Didn't respond. Didn't look directly at them. Kept my eyes on the road ahead, on Eli standing at the exact edge of the tree line with his flashlight. The watchers surrounded me now, close enough that I could feel cold radiating from them. Close enough to see they weren't quite solid, their edges blurring like they existed slightly out of phase with reality. They kept pace perfectly, matching my speed, staying just beyond arm's reach. 10 feet to the road, 5 feet. They stopped precisely at the edge of the forest, like an invisible wall they couldn't cross. The moment I dragged the driver onto the asphalt, they vanished, not walking away, just gone. The forest fell silent. Eli helped me carry the driver to the ambulance. His face was white, hands shaking. 9 years, he said quietly. 9 years I've worked here. First time anyone's gone in and come out. Someone needed help. Yeah. Question is why they let you. They could have kept you. They wanted to. I could see it. So why didn't they? Monday morning, Fisher's office. I sat across from him, exhausted, expecting to be fired. He studied me for a long time. The silence stretched. "You violated Rule 3. "Yes, sir." "You knew what was in those woods. You'd seen them. You went anyway." "A man was dying." Fisher leaned back. "But you came back, and you didn't engage with them. Didn't answer when they called your mother's voice, your partner's voice. Didn't go deeper when they invited you. You went in, did what needed doing, and got out." He tapped his fingers on the desk. First time in 77 years someone's entered forbidden territory during enforcement hours and walked back out. "Sir, I don't..." "The agreement isn't about fear, Klein. It's about respect. Mutual respect between two groups sharing territory. The Watchers don't want mindless obedience. They want neighbors who understand boundaries but retain their principles." He stood, walked to the window. "You went in for a legitimate rescue. Not to test them, not to prove something. To save a life, to honor your oath. And you respected enough of the protocols to show you still understood the agreement. You didn't acknowledge their voices, didn't let them draw you deeper. Showed courage without disrespect. They let you go because you earned it. You showed them something important, that we're not their servants, we're their neighbors. There's a difference." November came quietly. 1 month into my tenure, night patrols became routine as they could be. I saw the Watchers regularly now, standing in tree lines, watching from alleys, appearing in impossible places. Sometimes I swear they nodded as we drove past. Acknowledgement, neighbor to neighbor. The town felt different. The empty streets weren't eerie. They were peaceful, purposeful. The silence was respectful. The rules weren't chains. They were communication. I noticed things I'd missed before. Specific trees marked with carvings. Symbols the Historical Society told me were Susquehannock, certain stones placed at intersections, boundary markers maintained for generations. The town did its part every single day. December 21st, winter solstice, the longest night. Fisher gathered all of us at 7 p.m. Day shift, night shift, everyone. We drove in convoy, slowly circling the town's perimeter. At each major intersection, Fisher stopped, got out, placed a small bundle of hemlock branches tied with natural twine in the centre of the crosswalk. Winter acknowledgement, he explained. Showing respect, renewing the agreement. We've done this every solstice since 1947. At midnight, we parked in the town square, all vehicles facing outward, headlights creating a circle of light. The watchers emerged from every shadow, more than I'd ever seen. Dozens, maybe hundreds. They stood in a perfect circle around the square just beyond our headlights. Fisher walked alone to the centre of the square. Another year honoured, another year of peace. We remember the agreement. We respect the boundaries. The largest watcher stepped forward. Taller than the others, its form somehow more defined. When it spoke, its voice was wind through ancient trees and water over stone. Remembered, respected, continue. The other watchers echoed it, each voice slightly different, but all saying the same word. Continue. Then they were gone, all of them, simultaneously. Fisher returned to his vehicle, looking exhausted but satisfied. 6 months have passed since that night. I'm still here, still patrolling the empty streets of Mill Hall. Eli retired in March, moved to Harrisburg to be near his daughter. I'm senior night officer now. Last week, I trained a new transfer on the protocols. Watched him see his first watcher. Watched his worldview shatter and rebuild. I made an offer on a house on Cedar Street. 2 bedrooms, big yard. Started dating Emma from the Morning Star Diner. She knows about the agreement, about what her town really is. Everyone here does. They just don't talk about it with outsiders. Because I understand something now. We're not alone on this planet. We never have been. Some things were here before us, some things will be here long after we're gone. And survival isn't about domination. It's about respect, boundaries, coexistence. Every place has its price for peace. Mill Hall's price is remembering what was here first. If you're driving through Clinton County late at night and you pass through Mill Hall, you'll notice the empty streets. The businesses closed early. You might think it's strange, backward dying. But those empty streets are full of history, agreement, understanding. The people here aren't afraid. They're informed. They're wise enough to know some boundaries exist for good reasons. And if you see someone standing alone in the street after dark, keep driving. Don't stop. Don't stare. Don't try to help. Because some things are older than our laws, deeper than our understanding. The wisest thing we can do is acknowledge them and maintain our distance. I still follow the protocols, even off duty, even on my days off. Because I've stood in those woods with the watchers surrounding me, calling to me with the voices of the dead. I've seen what they are, what they can do. The watchers are real. The agreement is real. And some nights when the wind moves through the hemlocks just right, I can hear them, not threatening, just reminding us, reminding me. Respect the boundaries, honor the agreement, or become part of the woods yourself. Daniel's story reminds us that the world is older and stranger than we know. Some boundaries exist for reasons that transcend our understanding. If you enjoyed this case file, please subscribe to help us reach our goal of 10,000 subscribers by the end of 2026. We'll be here every single day with new stories from the void. Until next time, stay safe and maybe think twice before entering those deep, dark woods.